All right. So we're continuing on with the third part of our personality disorders, and we're going to be looking at cluster C this time. And this is the last lesson in the kind of base level of knowledge that you have to have in the must haves list of things that we have to learn in this unit. So we're going to be moving on to cluster C, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Lots of people will throw this phrase out there a lot and try not to be like they're kind of crass about it. Really, it's like, oh, I got OCD, but OCD actually is a real disorder that is really disruptive to people's lives, and it is based on anxiety and fearfulness. That's the root of it. There's some sort of fear, there's some sort of anxiety, and that's driving a compulsion to do something. Like, you got to do it. If you look at the list here, I have like some pictures, some subtypes of OCD: contaminating obsessions, like you got to clean stuff, you're worried about, getting sick, so you're washing your hands. Hoarding items, like you're afraid you're gonna not have enough, so you're gonna keep as much stuff as you can. Um, Obsessions with ordering and putting things in order. So like, I gotta have it just right. I gotta have my shoes just a inch here and an inch there. I gotta keep it just right. I had a friend when I was in high school, and I was sometimes in his room. He had everything so in order, and I would purposely just go and move it out slightly out of the way he had it, just to kind of mess with him. He always could figure it out too. He always knew I did it. And then sometimes a harm, worried about being harmed. So you're going back and you keep rechecking the stove like 100 times because you think you left it on. So these are subtypes of OCD, but OCD is a real, very disruptive disorder. All right. By the way, I'm gonna have this video posted on Google Drive. It's on YouTube. If you look up Howie Mandel talks about living with OCD, but I highly recommend it. It's a great story about Howie Mandel living with OCD, and it really gives you an insight into what it's like to live with him and how it impacts his family. And it's really a moving story. I find it to be fantastic. Highly recommend that. Next, okay. So what are the really key points here of obsessive compulsive disorder that I want you to have? One, often someone with OCD has a preoccupation with orderliness and perfectionism. So at their root, their personality is already geared toward perfectionism, and that perfectionism, for whatever reason, becomes obsessive. There's an obsessiveness. Also, they can be very difficult to work with because, or to get worked on sometimes, because if the situation doesn't fit like their rules, then they may be unable to make decisions or even get work done. So they'll come up with these rules that have to happen, and again, this will impact their ability to make a decision or to get any work done. We got back again. I talked about orderliness as kind of perfectionism as kind of a root cause of OCD, and you can see that each of these things listed here, there's something to do with like order or perfection, or I have to have everything, and it has to be just right, and I can't get rid of it, or I got to keep checking, and so that's the root here. All right. Also, and this kind of goes with hoarding. They may be unable to discard worn out or worthless objects, like they just hang on to things too long. And if you live with someone with OCD, they'll drive you a little nuts with stuff. This is where that hoarding aspect comes in. And they may not be the extreme, hoarding that you see on TV shows. It can be less than that and still be disruptive to family. And remember, with all personality disorders, it's going to be disruptive in somehow with the people they live with. Lastly, they may be reluctant to delegate tasks, meaning like give a task to someone else. Like a parent with OCD may not want to give the task to the child, or have others do the work unless the person will submit to exactly his or her way of doing things. So this would be like a parent who forces the child to do a task exactly the way they want. And if they're not, then there's probably like a level of impatience. And you kind of almost force that child into their own little perfectionist orderliness world. And that can have ramifications for the mental health of the child. So again, they don't want to let anybody else. Notice this here is there's a control aspect to this. There's like a kind of a control freak mentality a little bit with OCD. There's definitely a level of control that goes into this, and that's something where they have to go through therapy. Sometimes that includes medicine that kind of helps them not be quite as obsessed and allows them to live a little more typical. All right, awesome. Got to do the practices. Don't forget to do the practices. Good. All right, awesome.